Whoa, 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 whoa. Before you go, the answer is yes. You should always negotiate your offer letters. Always. That is the answer. Now, if you want me to explain some more, let me go over what I want to talk about in this video. So I'm going to kind of have this video in 3 parts. The first one is the basics of like how someone is hired. It's important to know how the whole process works, and I'm going to go over that. And then I'm going to branch off of that and talk about the dynamics of an offer letter. That's going to help because it helps you frame your questions and how you negotiate to actually get a better offer before you sign. And the last one might be the most valuable. I'm going to include a bunch of basic questions that start negotiations for people that are scared of negotiating or just kind of give someone an idea. And also just share some stories that actually helped me in the past. Okay, let's talk about the whole timeline of how someone actually gets hired. And the whole process starts way sooner than you think. First of all, the company finds money to hire. They create a budget, a hiring budget. And then after that, they actually divvy up and they decide where and what departments they want to hire. After they have that, they then take time to determine the requirements of the job, and they create a job rec, which is like the job opening that you see. And especially in engineering, you may find that a lot of people use recruiters to help to bring them in and interview for these job recs. And then after that, you have this big pool of people that you think might fit the job, and then you spend a lot of time of your own employees to interview those people to see if they're the right fit. And then after that, the company and the employees discuss and figure out which ones they want to choose to move on to each and every level. And they also want to sit around and discuss who they're going to bring on to the final stage and hand them an offer for that job. When they find the person, then they spend even more time to craft an offer letter to have them send it over to you. Now, the main point of me talking about all this is that it is a long process. Many people in the company are involved of making this happen. So you should know that they've already invested so much time and effort by the time you actually get an offer. Okay, now let's talk about like the dynamics of an offer letter. The offer letter is just something that they think that they can present to you, and it will close the whole process and finish everything. But there's a lot of different ways that the offer letter could be structured. You could have more vacation days. You could have a sign-on bonus. You could have RSUs. You could have stock options. You could have your salary. You could have a bonus. All of these are variables that you can play with and they can play with so that you guys can come to an agreement. And the number that they show you on every single one of those categories, that may not be the full picture. They may have more budget than you know for this position. So it's just really important to know those dynamics of the offer letter so that you can go in fully understanding the situation when you're about to sign that offer letter. So this is where we come to the main point of this whole video. The power of the interview process isn't just on the employer side. You have power too. They've spent so much time and effort to get to the stage of handing you an offer letter. They don't want to have all that effort be wasted. So that means you have the power to ask questions. And you can always ask questions respectfully and show that you still have interest of the job, but we're just trying to figure out that last inch. Now, I mentioned earlier there's a lot of players in play. There is HR, there's the hiring manager, there's also probably financing and maybe even a recruiter involved. All those people have influence on the number that's allowed to be put on the offer letter. And that also means is that they could have more budget than what they're telling you. So if they give you an offer for $100,000, maybe they actually have a budget for $120,000, but you just don't know about that. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that right away. So this brings me to like the very first and the most basic question that you can ask is, what is the range for this position? Surely just by asking that question, you understand where your offer lands in that range, and then it could provide you with more curiosity of how you can go higher in that range so that you can seal the deal. Now let's just use this example of $100,000 as an offer and then go from there, and I will share some of the tips and tricks, some of the negotiation questions that I've used in the past that have really worked for me. Now it's important to be respectful throughout the whole process. What I have done in the past is say, hey, I'm very excited about this offer. Upon reviewing it, I wanted to ask a couple more questions. Looking at the whole package, I noticed that the salary was $100,000, but looking at the benefits and everything that is involved with the position, I believe I was really hoping to land around $110,000 for the amount of responsibility for this job. When it's phrased like that, you're explaining that for this work, I believe that it is worth $110,000. Okay, one of the key reasons why you need to do this is that you don't know whether or not they have more money they can offer. There are times that they do give you the best offer right off the bat. You won't know if they have more unless you ask. There have been plenty of times in my career where I've seen me just asking for $5,000 or $10,000 more would work, and they just say yes right away. But other times I've heard them say, this is the absolute highest we can offer this position, I'm sorry. But then that's the point. The point is that you found it. You know whether or not they're giving you their best offer because they won't say that right away. Another good approach is to leverage other offers. I hope when you're job hunting that you have multiple jobs that you are looking at and you're trying to get hired to, so you're not just focused on just one job. Even if you are just focusing on one job and this is the only chance you get to get hired, you still should negotiate and you should still use phrases like this. You should ask questions. In this job hunt, I've been looking to try to get $110,000 to $115,000, and I have been looking at positions that pay that. Is there any way that we can meet at that amount? And there's one more final example that I want to share is that when you're having these negotiations, it's not going to be one email back and forth. It's going to be multiple while you guys are discussing and talking about this offer because it should be discussed. It shouldn't just be blindly signed. When having these conversations near the end, when you feel like you have a good judgment about where they stand on their offer, if they're giving you the best, it's always nice to just say, I'm still discussing with my family, with my partner, with whomever about taking this position. And where I stand today, if I'm able to get an offer letter for $5,000 more, then I know I'm going to sign it right away. That's the last push because they've spent so much time throughout this whole process and they can see the moment that they can close this whole process and get you hired onto their team. It's so close that just asking for an extra $5,000 usually doesn't break the bank, and you can know that you can just maybe squeeze a little bit more. And in the past, it's worked for me like 3 or 4 times in getting the extra $5,000. I hope I've given you some insight on how this whole process works and why you should always negotiate. And one last final thought is that every single raise, every single negotiation has a ripple effect throughout your career. If early in your career you're able to get an extra $5,000, that becomes your baseline for the rest of your career. You're going to branch off more and more from that, from all your raises and your promotions. Even though it just looks like $3,000 or $5,000 now, throughout the end of your career, you're going to have this ripple effect of this compounding off that decision. It's more than just the $3,000 or $5,000. So please, if anyone has an offer in hand and they're really scared about negotiating, you should always give it a try. Just ask simple questions, and you need to know as someone that's going to join a company if they're being honest with you and giving you the top offer. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have any other awesome stories or tips or tricks for negotiations or are scared yourself. I'd love to help you through any situation because I feel like everyone should have as much knowledge as possible to be able to confidently go through their career. All right, thanks guys.